All right, so we're finishing up the airway and breathing course here, and we've covered a lot of G and PG rated stuff. Very little R material sneaks in to these lessons. And Johnny and Roy, I think, did some crikes in their career, and so we need to talk about crikes. We need to talk about the cannot intubate, cannot oxygenate unit, and this lesson's on needle crike, and then we have the last one of this airway and breathing course on surgical crike. So we're 2 lessons away from being done, and we're down to the very rarely needed but incredibly highly critical that you be able to do it kind of techniques, needle crike. So needle crike is when you're not going to be able to do a surgical crike. The patient is too small, and you're going to have to just settle for oxygenation even if you sacrifice some ventilation. When to crike is the bigger deal to us compared to how to do it, because really this is like starting an IV in their cricothyroid membrane. Big deal. So when should you crike? And the answer is as soon as you have cannot intubate, cannot oxygenate. It's not like you're going to try oral intubation, and then you're going to try video, and then you're going to try salt, and then you're going to try a supraglottic, and then you're going to try a bag mask. And if you can't get him intubated with any of that, then you're finally going to go to a crike. It's not that at all. The moment you can't intubate your patient, and therefore can't oxygenate your patient either, if you can't intubate or can't oxygenate, you've got to go immediately to a crike. And so that's pretty much the plan. Now, again, you're going to get to oxygenate your patient okay with this technique, but the ventilation is probably compromised. And that's okay. We'll take oxygenation over ventilation for a short period of time. Technique, find the external landmarks, find the cricothyroid membrane, basically start an IV on it with your catheter pointed toward their feet a bit. So you insert and you slide the catheter over, pull the needle back. Some folks like to use a syringe with saline, so maybe you see bubbles. Once you get in, I think you're going to feel the pop, and you're going to know you're in. And so I'm not sure the syringe with bubbles is going to do me any good, but fortunately I've never done this, and hopefully never do. Then you got to use some sort of an adapter to attach it to the bag valve mask. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But basically you start the IV, you pull the needle, you leave an IV catheter sticking out of the person's neck at the cricothyroid membrane. And it's pretty good for getting some O2 in, but not a lot of ventilation is going to come back out through that hole. And so if they can't ventilate up through their mouth, you may have some hyperinflation issues, and you have to kind of let your patient deflate after a while. But we'll talk about that some more in the lab setting. Here's a quick picture of someone using a needle with a catheter over the top of it and a syringe with some saline to get the bubbles. I think the bigger deal here is the adapter stuff, and really you ought to pre-plan this. Don't try to play MacGyver when stuff's going wrong, and there's no duct tape involved in this, but it's like one of the only things I can think of in the universe where duct tape's not a good idea. But you want to pre-plan this and get your supplies ready. Have them in a little bag, have them in a little kit. You're talking about a cannot intubate, cannot oxygenate on a pediatric patient. This is incredibly low frequency, very high criticality. So you should pre-plan, you should train, and part of that is this adapter option sort of thing. Now, we'll let you play with this in class, and you get a feel for which one you want to use. Typically, your service will have one that it has named as the one to use. But we see people from different services from all over the state, different ideas, so here's a couple ideas. You can just take the adapter off the end of a 3.5 ET tube, and that will wedge right into that IV catheter. You're using a 14 gauge long to do your needle crike. So there's a 14 gauge IV hub sticking out of the neck of this patient, and you can just wedge in a 3.5 ET tube adapter, hook your bag up, and there you go. I'm a little concerned because I think it's going to keep coming loose, but maybe not. And so maybe that's an okay plan. The second one is really the one that I like better, and I take the barrel from a 3cc syringe, so you pull the plunger out and throw it, and take just the barrel and lure lock, twist lock that onto that IV catheter. So now it's not coming loose. It's not friction fit, it's lure locked on. And then I take the 7.0 ET tube, pull the adapter off of it, toss the tube, and use the adapter to wedge into that 3cc barrel. And I'm telling you, if you wedge that thing in there, it's not coming out. If you pop that 7.0 ET tube adapter into a 3cc barrel, it is stuck, and it's not coming out. So if I ever have to do this, that's my choice. I'm going to take that 3cc barrel, a 7.0 adapter, wedge them together, screw that whole apparatus onto the 14 gauge IV catheter, and then bag to that 7.0 adapter and just take it easy with the bagging, because I don't need to get a lot of oxygen in right off the bat there. I'm afraid about my ventilation not working well. Another thing that came to us from some folks out of Springfield, they said, hey, this is even simpler. Take a 10cc syringe, which everybody has, pull the plunger out, throw it away, and just use the barrel. Twist that onto that 14 gauge IV catheter, and then take any ET tube you want with a cuff on it, stick it in the syringe, and inflate it. I personally think that gives me a lot of stuff hanging out of this kid's neck. So we're talking about small folks that we would be doing this to. But, you know, whatever works. I just think you've got to plan this ahead of time so you're not trying to scramble in this highly critical but very rare situation.